Meeting to order. And David, will you be handling issues of the agenda here with roll call?
I will be.
Thank you. If you would do roll call, please.
Calroos, Woodward,
Here.
Yeager,
Yes.
Foley, Erickson,
Here.
Gorham,
Here.
and Duval.
Present. Thank you, David. At this time, would a member of the commission like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We're at item 4 on our agenda, looking for approval or amendments to tonight's agenda.
Move to approve, Yeager.
Yeager, approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Gorham, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Oh, excuse me, we'll have to do roll call on this. David? Or do we have, no members aren't present, so we can go by voice vote, excuse me. So at this point, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, looking for a motion to approve the minutes. We have minutes from the regular meeting held on October 20th, 2021, and a special meeting held on October 26th, 2021.
Move to approve, Yeager.
Yeager, motion. Is there a second? Erickson, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Old business, we have none. That brings us to new business, item number 7. We have interim use permit for 1919 South 6th Street. Director Chansky, could you please set us up for this, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So Janice Shobrin has submitted a request on behalf of Bridges of Hope for an interim use permit to operate a warming shelter for the homeless in the Brainerd Lakes area. One thing we do want to make just a quick clarification, 1919 South 6th Street is the building's address, but the actual location within the building, that the physical address of the office space that they will be using is 1926 South 6th Street. So 1919 is the building address, but the tenant at the space they will be using is 1926 South 6th Street.
7.
This location is located in a B4 general business district. On November 15th, so this past Monday, the city council did adopt ordinance number 1521. This ordinance allows for warming shelters in a B4 district as an administrative use. So as an interim use within section 515-63-5.A. Previously, this was an item that was not allowed in the city code. The city council, the planning commission took this up last month, drafted that, and then the city council adopted that ordinance amendment on the 15th. Within that new ordinance, warming shelters are allowed for the purpose of temporarily sheltering homeless persons, and there are 6 criteria within the ordinance that they must meet. The first is that the operation shall not exceed 16 continuous hours. The applicant is listing hours of operation as 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., so that is 12 hours. So that fits within the operational hours. The facility shall not exceed 30 beds, or total occupancy of the facility is set by the fire marshal, whichever is less. The shelter, they are proposing having 20 twin beds, and we'll have 2 separate sleeping areas, so one for the male side, one for the female side. So they will not exceed the 30. Additionally, I did hear, I believe the fire marshal did set an occupancy of that building, I think at 35. So they will be limited to 30 total, but they are only asking or planning to do 20 at this time. The facility, the third criteria is that the facility shall be staffed during all hours of operation. The applicant states that there will always be 2 staff members working unless the shelter director is working and sends staff home due to limited amount of guests. Said volunteers will always be accompanied by at least 1 paid staff member should a volunteer be there running the shelter that evening. The fourth criteria is that 24-hour contact information shall be provided to the City of Brainerd Police Department and the Crow Wing County Community Services Department and they have stated that they have will do that. And I know they've been working with both of those departments throughout this process as well. The fifth criteria is that except for bicycle racks, outdoor storage of equipment, furniture, personal items, and other such possessions of those using the facility is not permitted. And the applicant has stated that guest bags, outdoor clothing, and property will be locked up upon arrival at the shelter by staff in a secured guest closet indicated in the attached floor plan. And finally, the last criteria is that the facility shall meet all applicable building safety, fire, and health requirement codes. They are working with the fire marshal and the building official at this time. I know they've already done a walkthrough, kind of a code punch list walkthrough. The fire marshal and the building official gave them the things that need to be brought up to code, specifically when it comes to smoke alarms and fire and smoke detectors. So they will be working on that, and they will not be being issued a certificate of occupancy until those items are met. As of the writing of this memo, Community Development Department has been contacted by one member of the community in the form of an information request of the project. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we as staff do recommend approval of this interim use permit contingent on two conditions in addition to those already in the ordinance. The first is that the interim use permit shall expire on June 1st of 2022. We recommend this condition as we are, as you well know, updating our zoning code. While our zoning code, we're hoping to have that approved by the end of February. We felt that doing June 1st would get them through the winter. We didn't feel like it necessary to have them come back midwinter to try to re-up their interim use permit, let them get through the winter, and then next summer come back if they want to do it again. And the second condition is that if the Brainerd Police Department determines that the facility has been used in a disorderly manner, and upon recommendation of the police chief, the interim use permit shall be brought before the city council for review in consideration for suspending or revoking the permit in the next available city council meeting. This condition did come at request of the police chief, just as another control that the city has should things not go as smoothly as anticipated. And so that's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Before you open up the public hearing, I'll take any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, David. And just again, to be clear on the address, what is the address that the permit will be associated with again, please?
1926 South 6th Street.
Thank you. I see on the packet that 1926 is crossed out and 1919 is in there, but we are applying this, or addressing the permit to 1926 South 6th Street.
Mr. Chair.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, I'm seeing from the applicant that they're saying it's 7th Street. Can we clarify that?
1926 South 7th, all right. Right, so,
And then 1919 would be South 6th. And I don't know which is right, but I guess make sure we get that clarified.
okay. So are we in a shared understanding, Director Chansky, the address for this permit will be 1926 South 7th Street, Brainerd?
Yes, I do believe that is correct. Actually,
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I guess I have a question and for David, and David, this is Tad. I think you touched on it just briefly, but there's the 6 conditions and then staff's recommending these additional 2. Is that correct?
Correct. So the conditions in the ordinance are the minimum things that they must meet to qualify for that interim use permit. And then the other 2 conditions are ones that staff are recommending be added to this specific permit.
Thank you. And then question on the first one, the interim use permit shall expire on June 1st, 2022. What happens after that? As we stand now, or is that also assuming we pass or approve the new zoning ordinance?
Yep, so
Clarify
what would
that.
happen, is on June 1st, that permit expires, and they will no longer have the ability to operate that warming shelter. What they would have to do is reapply for a new interim use permit. And how it goes is they were either assuming that the new zoning code goes into effect, they would have to then, their new interim use permit would have to meet any and all conditions in the new ordinance. should there be anything different from what we have now. So they would have to meet the new ordinance at that time. If for some reason we haven't adopted the ordinance, they would just have to apply for a new interim use permit based off of this language in the current ordinance.
One brief follow-up.
Erickson.
So under either scenario, whether the new zoning ordinance has been adopted or not, they'd still have to come back for a new interim use and would be operating under an interim use?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff?
And Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Director Chansky.
And to that, I just want to clarify, that's kind of goes again to the purpose of interim use versus a conditional use, is that it can be temporary. You can put time limits on things. If it's something that you don't necessarily want to be there forever or run with the land, which a conditional use permit allows.
One quick question.
Mr. Gorham.
Is this interim use permit as we're seeing it today, is this the same as it was when we last revisited? Have there been any changes? Did the city council make any changes, or they just approved it?
They adopted the ordinance as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions of staff? All right, with hearing none, I'm trying to figure which clock we want to operate off of. At 6:13, we're going to open the public hearing, and we can begin by hearing testimony from the applicant, and then we'll take additional testimony after that. So call that public hearing is now open. Ms. Shobrin, would you care to represent your permit?
Thank you for having us. I come to you again tonight to thank you for working with us thus far. Of course, I've shared in the past that we as Brainerd are hosting this project. However, this is truly a community collaboration. We have well over 30 different entities, faith-based, law enforcement, nonprofit, and many community members who are coming around this project and who have kind of stood together to say that nobody should have to sleep outside when it's cold. We have seen our group grow and grow for the last few months. You may have seen some of the press and the social media around our sleep out so others can sleep inside. November is National Homelessness Awareness Month, and so we kicked off the month with this fundraiser. And we also wanted to raise awareness. Of course, it's important that we raise funds for the shelter. I think when I was before you last time, I said we really see this project, while there are many details, we really see it hinging upon three major factors: a location, which is what we need to work with you all on, funding for the project, and of course staffing. So we'll see how this group chooses to act tonight. I can tell you from a funding perspective and a community support perspective. Oh, sure. I'm using my mom voice. I guess I didn't even notice there. There we go. From a community engagement and support perspective, we had more than 25 people choose to sleep outside to raise awareness for this event the first week of November. We set out to raise $70,000 in 7 days to support the project. That $70,000 represented what we needed to secure 1 full year of funding for the shelter. I was a little nervous. I've been doing fundraising for 20 years, but I was still nervous about that. That felt like a big goal in 7 days. And our community came alongside us and actually blew that goal out of the water. We raised I tallied it again today. We now have raised $151,000 in the last 2.5 weeks for this community shelter. I think what I find most notable about that is while there were a couple of big gifts in there, it was well over 300 separate gifts. So we're talking people coming forward with $25, $50, and $100, which I really see as a broad community support for this project. So I'm happy to report that when we are allowed to open this shelter, we are 75% funded for 2 years. And obviously, we have to take those steps one at a time to get into a second year. But I'm really pleased to know that we can focus on the staffing and the rules and the community engagement and the safety because the community has supported us so well in the funding piece. As you know, you heard from Ann before too. Ann has been hired as a shelter director. She comes to us with an excellent background and with military experience, law enforcement, and with a social work degree. So we think she's just the perfect person. one of the other pieces I was concerned about, I didn't know who we would find that would want to work overnights. And I'm pleased to say, too, we have had people calling us and applying for these positions really before we even know we have them. So we really feel that we've put the 3 pieces into place that we need to, provided that we can move forward with this permit. And we think we can successfully open the shelter soon and get people in from the cold. Overwhelmingly, the community response has been positive, and we have had some people share concerns with us, and we welcome that and we invite that. We want our community to support this, and we understand there might be some fears and concerns around safety and our plans and that sort of thing. So we absolutely are here tonight to help shed any light on any issues that people might have. We've had some conversations with folks who have shared specific concerns with us, and I can tell you that across the board, when we're able to talk to somebody face to face and hear their concerns, we've been able to put their concerns at ease to the best of our ability. So I guess that's what I have for you tonight. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have, but otherwise I'll yield the floor to others. Thank you.
Ms. Shobrin. If you could stay with us here at the podium. James, could you move to some of the graphics there? You have a couple of layouts of floors I'm trying to figure out which is your planned layout, which is sort of, I'm
Sure.
guessing one's existing, right? And you've,
Correct.
so this is your planned here?
That's the planned layout. And really, there aren't a lot of changes that we are proposing structurally to the building. As the space lays out right now, really, when we move in there, we will remove some doors from some of those outside spaces that you see. You know, we don't want places that can be hiding spots or, you know, or anything like that where we wouldn't be able to have supervision of the space. The space will be fairly wide open and without doors on those side rooms, with the exception of rooms that need to be locked for staff use or for storage of items. We will install an excellent camera security system, so the staff will be able to monitor all angles of the building that don't have direct line of sight. It's a pretty open space. There's fairly direct line of sight with the exception of a few spots where we will focus the cameras. The main piece, as Director Chansky talked about, we have met with the fire marshal and we need to do some things in terms of fire alarming the entire building and then working on some draft stop material. And we've already engaged with contractors to get the ball rolling. So we are ready. We've got quotes and we're able to do that as soon as we have the permit. And then we want to complete those pieces so we can get our occupancy certificate.
And the next layout drawing is the existing, is that correct?
Correct, yep.
Is that how it looks?
That's, I believe that's the entire building. So we would just be in the, if I'm looking at the drawing correctly, I think we'd be at the top right. Oh, top left, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Or are we
now-
the whole top there? No. Yep,
Got
there
it.
we go. Yep, thank you.
To the top left corner.
Thank you, yep.
All right, that helps me figure
Yep.
out where this was at.
Yep, you see that spot right where it says the 130 feet on the left. That's the back entrance on South 7th Street there to the parking lot.
Very good. Other questions of the applicant?
I have one.
Ms. Woodward?
Are you planning both internal and external surveillance of the site too? So that
Yes, excellent
All
question,
inspections
yes.
will be in.
We will have cameras on the entrance of, the back part of the building where people will be entering. And that was one of the concerns we actually heard is from an adjacent office space. They just said, well, what if, we come into work early sometimes? And Ann has assured them, we will give you our number. You can call us if you feel like you would like an escort into your office space. We can do that, or we can be looking at the cameras and tell you it's all clear, there's nobody out there. So yes, we will have internal and external surveillance.
I just have a quick question,
Gorham.
out of curiosity. What do you expect the season to be? Do you expect to go all the way through June, or just out of curiosity, what do you expect
Sure.
the season to be?
Yeah, we anticipate the season to be, we'll open as soon as we possibly can. We want to get people in out of the cold. We anticipate operating through April 30th. We hope that Mother Nature is kind enough that maybe people can, we don't ever really want people sleeping outside, to be honest. And maybe that's a next phase of this project, is looking at what a shelter looks like all year round. We don't know. That's not what we're proposing tonight. We know that it's especially dangerous for people to be sleeping outside in the cold. In a typical operational year, we would anticipate being open from approximately October 15th through April 30th, depending on temperatures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr.
Yeah, I have a
Erickson?
question. I like how you've laid out the hours and you're limiting to 16 hours, sounds like actually 12.
Correct, yeah.
What about like long-term clientele? Someone either
Sure.
gets a job maybe, but they're coming back indefinitely, or how?
Yeah.
Have you considered limiting that or no? And if so, why not?
Yeah, we've talked about it so far, and we really see this first winter as somewhat of a pilot project, of course. We don't have any intentions right now to limit somebody from staying more than X number of days per se. However, what we do anticipate is by building a relationship with somebody, say, who might be in and out multiple nights, maybe for weeks, we really think that we would build a relationship with that person, and when the time is right, be making referrals on to whether it's mental health services, chemical dependency services, or maybe this person is employed. You know, like we've talked about before, it's a misconception that everyone who's homeless is unemployed. You know, there are some people that are living in their car and then trying to get to work the next day and function that way. So we see that we would want to connect people to resources when they want to engage with us. Yeah, we don't necessarily intend this to be comfortable enough. We want people to feel comfortable and to have refuge, but we don't intend for this to be anyone's long-term living situation. I mean, these are wide open areas with a cot and a pillow and a blanket. You don't have your own room or your own space. So we'll have to see how this first year goes and decide if it's wise to impose any sort of number of night limits or anything on someone. Yeah.
Ms. Woodward?
I have another question. I think I heard Ann say the fire marshal said that the capacity could be 49.
I think, well,
39 or 49?
They did say 49, the fire marshal, but I know in the permit, they had said that was issued, we wouldn't exceed 30.
30.
Yes. Do you anticipate being at capacity, or do the numbers kind of say that 30 is going to be enough?
You know, it's tough. Again, this is a pilot program. The way we based our original numbers is off of Crow Wing County's protective sheltering program that they operated for just over a year. And while that project is very different than what we are proposing, they saw an average of 30 people per night, but that included folks who maybe had kids with them, whereas we will just be 18 and up only. So that's where we estimated that our number would be around 20 per night, but we do have, you know, we would be able to go up to the 30 with some overflow mats and that sort of thing, because we would hate to turn the 21st person away, for example. So, but yeah, we wouldn't intend to go over the 30 for certain, and 20 is what we originally were planning for. Mm-hmm.
Shobrin, you'll be making some investments in this property, clearly, to make the improvements necessary to get the desired layout and to meet some of the requirements of the fire marshal, and you've had great success, it sounds like, in being able to raise funds to help underwrite some of those costs, or to, not underwrite, but quite frankly, to cover those costs.
Correct.
Could you speak to the proposed interim use permit shall expire on June 1st of 2022? Can you operate with that as reasonably and conceivably continue your operation? Does that compromise any of your funding commitments, any of your volunteer or staffing
Sure.
commitments? Can you help me think about that date?
Absolutely. So it doesn't compromise any of those items that you recommended or that you brought up. We have gone into this sharing with our funders, whether they're grant funders or individuals in the community, that this intends to be a warming shelter for starters, that we could expand in the future. So we have shared that, you know, we would be that October 15th to April 30th solution. With any of the potential staff members we've visited with to this point too, we've also let them know that they would be a seasonal hire. So this would be a seasonal position.
So it's your impression that the June 1st, a permit expiring is not a limitation on your proposed operations, you know, for this winter, for example?
Correct. It would fits our needs well for the fact that we want to operate a pilot program on a project on a warming shelter. Yep. We would, if it, you know, when it all goes well, as we expect, we definitely see this as a jumping off point in being able to care for our community, whether it means expanding into helping families with children have a place to sleep at night, or whether we look at other times of the year that we would want to not have people sleeping outside as well.
Thank you. Other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, are there any other thing that you would like to share with us before we move to public input?
I would just thank this group. You guys have been wonderful to work with, and we've appreciated the fact that you've heard us and you recognize the need, and that it's cold outside, and you've been working with us. You've been doing your due diligence, but you've been working with us to keep this project moving forward in a timely manner. So thank you for that. Yep.
Thank you. So at this time, we'd like to open the floor to individuals who would care to share their perspectives on this proposal. We'd ask you to provide your name and your address, and we may limit time to 3 minutes or under. So at this point, is there anyone that would care to speak to the proposal tonight? Don't need to be shy. Yeah?
Yes.
Yes, please come up to the podium, please, and state your name and address, please.
My name is Dawn Graf. My address is 1836 South 8th Street, Brainerd. And I'm not opposed to a shelter in Brainerd, but I'm opposed to the location of this shelter. It's less than a half block from my home. I'm extremely concerned about how people are going to get to and from the shelter. I get up and walk every morning at 6 a.m. I'm not comfortable with, the fact that people are going to be loitering around. I know not during the sleeping hours, but getting to and from the shelter. I'm worried about vandalism, property damage, my property values. I mean, what's this going to affect? And maybe that sounds selfish, but how is it going to affect? I've lived there for almost 40 years. This really concerns me.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to the proposal? Yes, you state your
Hi.
name and address, please.
My name's Emma Crust. I live at 133 Kelly Ray Road on south side of Brainerd. I've been volunteering with Bridges of Hope to get this project going, and I've been blessed by many members, and I've been very excited about this. Coming from personal experience of homelessness, I think having this step up, maybe when I was younger, could have gotten me back into the community as a contributing member a lot faster, and having the resources right there. Our community is facing a housing and homeless crisis, and we have for a long time. These people are already here. They're already in our community. They're in our backyards. They're in our abandoned buildings. Their cars are parked out in your alleyways. It's having this place and having that support, I think, is going to be really integral part of maybe changing the direction of this and being able to get people off on a better foot, and maybe shedding a little bit of light that, again, these are very good people. Most of them will want to just keep their head down and be thankful and blessed that they have somewhere to stay. And I just really want to emphasize the fact that they're already here. It's not going to be like an arrival date. And I think having some resources in a place where they can be safe, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would care to speak to the application tonight? Thank you. State your name and address, please.
Jan Burton, 1017 Terrace Avenue, Brainerd. I just would like to ask Jana how much experience she has had in the past.
If you would direct your questions to me, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
How much experience she has had with the homeless, and also where are these people coming from, and what will they be doing during the day? Wandering the streets? I think it's a fair question to ask.
Thank you, Dan. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to the proposal tonight? Don't be shy. Come on. Thank you. State your name and address for the record, please.
Nathan Bertram, 13342 Nokasippi River Road, Brainerd, Minnesota. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I'll speak to the numbers real quick that were touched on a little bit. As far as individuals and not families, we had 22 and a half individuals week in, week out when we did our sheltering over COVID. I would anticipate a similar number, I guess. And just a little bit more to the numbers, since 2017, Crow Wing County Community Services has averaged about 103 walk-ins per year. They're in our community, they're walking in the doors, looking for help. It really is a disservice when we have to send them to St. Cloud to that homeless shelter and people get lost along the way. And we can't get them connected to the services that we need to get them connected to. So I really think this is an opportunity for us to keep our own people local and get them connected to the resources here in our own community, and hopefully get them the help they need to move forward and get housed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to the proposal before us tonight? Yes, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
Danielle Eggert,
I'm
2085.
sorry, I can't hear you.
You couldn't hear me?
No.
Oh my gosh. It's so loud. Danielle Eggert, 20859 North Sorenson Lake Trail, Merrifield, Minnesota. I just wanted to share just a different perspective, and I think a lot of times if we're not open to seeing the hurt or need, we don't see it, whether we choose not to or we're just so busy with our own lives, we don't see it out there. I'm going to share a story. I manage Common Goods in Baxter, and I was talking to one of my volunteers about the warming shelter and my involvement in it, and that I was going to sleep outside. And I told him, I said, you know what, Bill, we're all one crisis, one bad decision away from being homeless ourselves. The difference is most of us have a support network, but not everybody has a support network. And he kind of got teary-eyed, and he looked at me and he said, you know what, Danielle, you are exactly right. He said, my son is living in the cities. He's in his mid-30s. He got addicted to alcohol. He had a DWI, lost his license. He went on to lose his job. He moved in with his girlfriend. That relationship didn't work out, and he got kicked out. He was essentially homeless. He would have been homeless if Bill and his wife didn't allow his son to come back home. So that's something to really consider. These aren't evil people, or maybe they just had a misfortune, or they didn't have the right connections or the help to get them to a good place. So that's what we're hoping this can be. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jill. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to this proposal tonight?
Good evening.
Your name and address, please, Ann?
Ann Honeycutt, 1822 County Road 2, Fort Ripley. I have been hired to run the shelter, and I'm working with a great team, and they have a vision. So my goal is to make this vision happen. I am a Brainerd resident of 44 years. I grew up at 1215 South 9th Street. I've raised my kids in Brainerd on Hawley Street, right next to Kelly Bevins. So I've always lived in Brainerd. So my goal as the shelter is to keep the community safe. My children go to school here. All of our children go to school here. We all have to live here, and I want to make sure that the community feels safe. It is my job, and I will do it well to make sure that it is ran effectively and safely for the community and also for the guests and the staff. Chief Bestel, I've worked with him. I was a Baxter police sergeant for 12 years. My family has been police officers in this area since I was a child. It is my goal to work very collaboratively with the hospitals and the police departments in this area, make sure that we run this program effectively. I also have talked with other shelters in Bemidji, Rochester, that this has not brought up crime in the area. There's a Brainerd graduate who works for the Bemidji Police Department. He works with the Wolf Center up there, which is a homeless shelter, and he says it's a great program and it works very well for their community. So I just want you to know that I will work very hard to make sure that the community feels safe, the city feels safe, and that we run this program effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to this proposal tonight? Is there anyone else that would care to speak to the application before us tonight? And last time, is there anyone else that would care to speak to the proposal tonight? All right, well, we will end public input then. I have maybe a couple of questions, Ms. Shobrin. I think I heard a couple of issues that you might be able to help us think about, and one of that was the experience that you may have related to this. If you
Sure.
could speak to that, that would be helpful for me.
Sure. Yep. So while I myself have not run a homeless shelter, that it hasn't fallen under my responsibility. My entire career has been working with community development, children, youth, and families, working with families who are living in poverty, families who are struggling to get by and who need support. So while I may not have ever run a homeless shelter, I certainly have a wealth of experience, as does our entire team. It doesn't just hinge on what I know. We have an entire team who has worked with the population we are talking about. Let's be honest, we haven't had a homeless shelter in Brainerd. We had New Pathways, which was a program that rotated through churches, but so I don't know that we have many people in Brainerd who have exact experience in this. However, we do have people on our team who have ministered to these folks through the faith community, who have worked with them maybe in a police capacity. And we have members of our team who have definitely talked to many, many people over the years who have shared that they're couch surfing, living in their cars, or that they're sleeping outside somewhere. So we definitely have an understanding of the needs of the folks who are facing homelessness, and we are not reinventing the wheel. We're not doing it ourselves. We are closely modeling this program after other successful existing programs. So I guess that's how I would respond.
Thank you. And you are part of a neighborhood.
Yes.
And maybe you could speak a little bit to how you would manage neighborhood relations. Do you have any thoughts about that as far as any places of conflict?
Yeah.
Or general concerns in how your policies or your guidance that you have for operational staff might help to resolve
Sure.
some of those concerns?
Yep. So I guess the first thing I would say that is anyone, and I would love to have a conversation one-on-one with anybody and with our group about the direct concerns, because we want to put people's minds at ease. We have an extensive manual that's been written. Again, we took existing policies from other shelters. We've had local law enforcement look over our policies and ask us questions and make recommendations to things that we should consider and include. Our office is next door to this space, so I feel comfortable with our staff coming and going. I mean, this time of year, most of us go to work in the dark and go home in the dark, and I can say that I feel completely comfortable with our staff coming and going from our office, knowing that this facility would be right next door to our office space. I used to be a resident of the South 6th Street neighborhood myself. I can say that I would feel comfortable knowing who we have running it and the care that we have. I would feel comfortable. We want to engage with our neighborhood community. We've talked about having some listening sessions and pulling people together and hearing from them and letting them know. I think sometimes when you can pull the curtain back and you can have that one-on-one conversation, most things become quite a bit less scary. Anne has addressed one concern in particular. For example, what if there is loitering after hours? What if it's 8:30 or 9 a.m. and some folks are hanging around? Well, for one thing, folks are already hanging around different places. We may or may not come across them in our day-to-day life, but there are folks that are hanging around already. And Anne knows that she can develop a relationship with our guests, and that we can say, this is your place at night, but during the day, we do have an expectation that you move on to work, doing whatever errands you have during the day, or wherever you need to go to walk, to stay safe, to stay warm. But we would ask that you would, move away from the immediate area to appease some of those concerns. Anne has talked about how she's committed to herself or even her staff, kind of training them on doing a little drive around in a certain number of block area, for example. And if we see one of our guests is kind of hanging around and we're not quite sure why, we would just be able to say, hey, Teresa, what do you have going on today? You know, maybe you should kind of move along. So, and we're open to hearing concerns. Anne has said, please, anyone who has concerns, call me directly and we will figure out a solution to your concern.
Thank you for that. So with that, I'm going to bring the public hearing to a close at 6:40 or 6:39 and move this conversation back to the members of the commission. At this point, is there any discussion on what we've heard tonight? Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion to approve an interim use permit for 1626 South 7th Street in Brainerd. Excuse me, 1926 South 7th Street in Brainerd, with the additional conditions that an interim use permit shall expire on June 1st, 2022, and that the Brainerd Police Department determines that the facility has been used in a disorderly manner. Upon the recommendation of the Chief of Police, the interim use permit shall be brought before City Council for review and consideration for suspending or revoking the permit at the next available City Council meeting. So, do I have a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chair, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to commend those in this room for the nobility of your work. I'd like to thank you and acknowledge your efforts and the grit that you've invested thus far to even make this a possibility. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the IUD with the added conditions 1 and 2.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Mr. Erickson, second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I got a few
Erickson,
things
please.
to add. So I just wanted to mention too, as I've been thinking through this, I keep considering the scenario if the petitioner had come and said, you know, we've raised all this money, is this something that the city would do? I would vote no. I don't think that's an appropriate role for the city, even though it's a noble endeavor. I don't think it's a role for the city, but that's not what's being asked here. What's being asked is for the city to make some concessions under a permit so that a nonprofit can do the work that nonprofits do, along with a coalition of other nonprofits and other faith-based organizations. So as I was thinking through this, I kind of looked at it through that lens. And I think for me, and things that I've heard, people have spoken with me about it, I've spoken with others, everybody has concerns. The petitioners themselves have said that there's going to be issues. They're kind of going into this with their eyes wide open. And so for me, and where I sit, both council and here in the Planning Commission, that I really like the 2 conditions that staff have recommended here. They've already been stated, but I want to read them again. The fact that they'd be operating under an interim use permit with an expiration date of June 2022 as a pilot program. And so there will be an opportunity to reevaluate this at that point. And then within that time frame, the condition number 2, if the Brainerd Police Department determines that the facility has been used in a disorderly manner and upon the recommendation of the police chief, the interim use permit shall be brought before City Council for a review. So there's ample opportunities to continue to revisit this. And so I plan to support it because of those 2 conditions and because of the group that they've put together and the plan that they've laid out, and given the organizations that are being proposed to run it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Ms. Woodward, do you have a comment?
I do. Mr. Chair, in regards to the location of this being in the South 6th corridor, there have been some concerns about the location of this being so close to a residential neighborhood. The gas station is down South 6th that's closest. The laundromat, the soup kitchen can be accessed down the South 6th corridor. And I really see that having this located so close to South 6th will drive the traffic to and from the shelter up and down South 6th. They'll have easy access to the community resources. There isn't anything on the other side of the neighborhood that requires them to go, like say somebody would take a shortcut through someone's backyard, which I think would be a community concern, that we would be creating traffic through the neighborhood. I think that the location of this is going to drive the traffic for it up and down the corridor.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. Any other comments? Mr. Gorham?
I just want to say I'm really proud of the work the organizers have done. You make me feel really good about this community that I live in, and I look forward to voting yes for this.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Is there any other discussion on this?
Mr. Chair,
Woodward.
if I may, I believe there was one other question that pertained to the hours of operation and whether or not people would be coming and going at early hours in the morning. If it was my understanding, once the guests are in, the doors are locked and they're not released until 8 a.m. Is that how the operation is planned?
Ms. Shobrin, could you address that question, please? Thank you.
So while we highly encourage folks to be in for the night once they are in, we also recognize that these are adults. And if somebody is demanding to leave, we cannot hold them hostage essentially, so they will be allowed to leave. However, an incentive to stay is that your belongings cannot be checked out until after 6 a.m. So that's the encouragement, I guess I would say, to stay, is that you may leave, but you would have to then come back after 6 a.m. to collect your belongings.
Thank you. All right, well, any other discussion on this? Hearing none, I think let's move to a vote, please. Look for all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, that motion carries. That will now go, Director Chansky, the path of interim use permit will go next to where?
Yep, Mr. Chair, the city council on Monday actually has already called a special meeting for Monday, November 22nd. So that's this upcoming Monday at 6 p.m. to consider the planning commission's recommendation on this interim use permit. So then again, that'll be going before the council in a special meeting Monday, the 22nd at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Thank you, Director Chansky. So your next stop is City Council next Monday. So with that, moving on now to the public forum, item 8 on the agenda. This is time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the Planning Commission, and again, time limits may be imposed. Is there anyone that would wish to address the, well, let me begin by opening that public hearing at 7:40 or 6:45. And is there anyone that would care to address the Planning Commission at this time? Is there anyone who would care to address the Planning Commission? And last call, anyone care to address the Planning Commission? And James, I'm going to look at you. Is there anyone online? All right, thank you. Then we're going to close the public hearing, or the public forum at 6:46, and move to the Community Development Director's report. Mr. Chansky.
Don't feel like
Mr.
you have to
Chair.
stay, by the way. It's
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So
riveting.
a few things tonight. First of all, on the zoning code update workshop regarding the commercial standards, the council did that on November 8th. Unfortunately, that was the day that my daughter was born, so I was not able to attend. But all reports that I have received is that it went well and was received well by the council.
Was that an unfortunately your daughter was? I think that's quite
It's
fortunate.
not unfortunate that
Okay.
my daughter was born. It's unfortunate that I couldn't be there that night.
Okay.
The best of excuses, though.
Okay.
So we're continue to move forward with the zoning code update. As I think I discussed last month, the next item will be December 15th, which is your regular meeting in December. Hopefully having a joint meeting with the city council. Will be invited to that meeting to discuss some miscellaneous items that weren't addressed in so far, as well as, and that'll be actually, an emphasis will be on some design standards. So that'll be your regular meeting on December 15th. A couple updates on some other items, 3 items. First is Country Manor. If you remember earlier this year, Country Manor came before the Planning Commission to have a property rezoned to a PUD district, as well as get their development stage plan approved for that PUD. They have submitted a financial assistance, a public financing request to the city. Staff are reviewing that right now. Plan is to have that go before the EDA in December before it then goes to the city council. So they are still planning on moving ahead with that project. They still would like to hopefully start moving dirt in the spring. So probably after the beginning of the year, we should be seeing, the planning commission should be seeing the final stage plan for that. From what I last heard that their plans are pretty much completely done at this point. Everything's out. They actually went out to bid once already. Prices came in about 10% higher than they were expecting. So what they kind of decided to do was wait until the beginning of the year and go out for bid one more time to see where prices come at. And then they'll be submitting, once they talk to council about potentially things like tax abatement or whatever they're asking, then coming back to that final stage plan in early 2022 so they can start moving dirt in the spring. The 805 Laurel project, that's also an item that came before you in June, redevelopment project for the old Thrifty White building. A little bit of an update on that project. That hit a little bit of a snag as the developers were not selected for low-income housing tax credits. However, they are still moving forward with the project now as a market rate project, which actually we think that'll actually fit maybe even better in the downtown area. So we're still working with them. They're just kind of shifting gears a little bit on that project to make it a market rate project, still mixed use with some commercial and then housing. The last item I have, Mr. Chair, is regards to the Parking Commission. The Parking Commission submitted their parking plan to the City Council. They presented that in a workshop on October 25th. And on December 6th, the council will actually be taking some formal giving council formal direction and discussion on that plan of what to do with that next. Their 8 proposals. So that'll be coming on December 6th before the City Council. And that, Mr. Chair, is all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any questions for our development director?
I do. I heard that the Parking Commission did a smashing job with this. Would you agree that that's the assessment, Mr. Chansky?
Absolutely.
Leading the witness.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Chansky? All right, hearing none, we're moving on to commissioner questions and comments. Maybe if we can start with you, Mr. Erickson, and move down the bench.
Just that the parking commission did a great job with the recommendations.
Puppeting the words.
That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Woodward.
I missed what the top recommendations were. If there were highlights, I'd like an update on what the Parking Commission has sent forward and what the top ideas are.
It's #1 trending in the nation right now, so it's easy to find. Yeah.
Easy to. Mr. Gorham.
Got nothing.
Mr. Eggert.
None. Thank you.
Really? All right. Well, I guess the only thing I have is congratulations, David, on the a smashing excuse to get out of a meeting. So good job on that. And wish you well on that. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We'll give that to Woodward on the motion, second Erickson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are formally adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
You just tell them about that diesel.